Hello, and welcome to our monthly webinar hosted by SpinGo. My name is Colin Mathis, and I am the Content Marketing Manager here, and thank you for joining us today. This is a free monthly webinar series where we present ideas and methods to help event makers promote, market, and manage their events. If you're joining us for the first time, thanks for being here. And welcome back to those who have attended before. Today we are discussing how to learn to manage and excel at event planning amid the chaos. Before we get started, please take note that you are welcome to submit any comments or questions via the GoToWebinar panel. We will be having a brief Q&A following the presentation in order to answer those questions. We are also recording today's webinar, which will be available later for on-demand viewing. Look out for an email with the video link that will be available sometime after the conclusion of this webinar. Now, I am excited to introduce to you today's presenter, Kreg, CEO and founder of SpinGo, where he works to enable event makers to create awesome events. Before creating SpinGo, Kreg founded Spin Media Marketing, providing clients with strategy, product development, marketing, and technology solutions to drive growth and profitability. He has a proven record for success and has been working behind the scenes on events since he was a kid. Kreg also makes a mean bowl of guacamole. Kreg, I'll turn the time over to you.
Thanks, Colin. It's good to be here with you. And I think it goes without saying that I'm a fan of this show. It's a good webinar, and good to be here as the presenter today. So thanks again. Well, today I wanted to talk about the world of an event maker. The reality is we're all, to some degree, masters of chaos. And I think of it as really what we're all about is we're going out there to create experiences. We're creating experiences to help people to have a more fulfilling life, have an opportunity to connect with those they care about, and maybe experience new things that they haven't before had any opportunity to experience. And one of our core beliefs here at SpinGo is that experiences truly are greater than things. And what we mean by that is you can go out and try to spend your life collecting cars or houses or any number of things, trinkets that you have in your house. But really, at the end of your life, you look back and you look at all the opportunities and the experiences you've had. Those are the things that come to the forefront. One of the most prized things that I hold is pictures and photos. I have hard drives full and multiple backups of all the photos I've had with my family and friends over the years, going to events, just having experiences, whether it be a holiday or a family birthday or a live event. Those are just the most important things to me in my life. And as event makers, we have an opportunity to create these live experiences for other people. And earlier in my career, I thought I'd go into film. I was pretty convinced that I would work behind the scenes on movies, and I liked that because I worked with. I was a sound designer, sound engineer for many years on post production for a lot of films and documentaries, and that was really exciting. And I love to create those virtual experiences or the cinematic experiences. But when you think about it, really a movie touches two senses. You can definitely have an emotional response to that, but you're only really working with sight and sound. But as event makers, you're actually dealing with all five senses. You have the opportunity to influence all of the senses that somebody can have at a live experience. When you think about what are you doing for catering or for the food trucks, or what are you doing for the atmosphere, you really do create something that leaves a lasting impression on everybody who's attending. And so I wanted to think through collectively here as a group about some of the things as event makers that we have the ability to influence. And I boiled it down to what I call the event maker chaos management list. And we're going to just go through and talk through a few things. And then I'm just going to share some experiences I've had as I've been involved with a lot of events over the years and things that I've learned through the process. So one of the first things that I look back as I prepare for an event, I think, what is the grand vision for the experience? Obviously, there's the core things you want to accomplish. You may want to generate revenue. You want to have 50,000 attendees. You have your benchmarks, but what is really the grand vision? What what we look back and say, this really was a remarkable experience. This was something that we wanted to accomplish, and we accomplished it. And there may be some things that go differently than expected, but overall, what is the grand vision? And I think this applies to entrepreneurship as well. I think every event maker to some degree is an entrepreneur, and they have an opportunity to create new business opportunities and new jobs for other people. And as anybody knows, when you do a new startup venture, things always go differently than expected, but you can still have a lot of control over the overall outcome. The second one is what constitutes success. And this goes back to some of those success metrics I mentioned earlier, maybe the number of attendees or the amount of tickets you sold or the number of sponsorship dollars you can gather. All those things might be what constitutes success. But I think you have to kind of weigh those two against each other. The grand vision is one part, and the numerical success might be another part. And nobody goes to an event and says, wow, I'm really glad there are 45,000 attendees instead of 43,000 attendees at this event. Nobody really thinks of it that way from an attendee perspective. But they do think about the emotional response they had, the memories that were created while they were there. The third is who and what am I depending on for this event to be a success? And this leads more into the chaos management. Where are my contingencies? Where do I have potential pitfalls? What could possibly go wrong? And as we all know from experience, if something can go wrong, it most likely will. And so you've got to think through, where am I dependent on something else? And where can you have some backup plans prepared, some things that bring things back into your control. And so I have a reputation just among the team here at SpinGo for always having a bunch of zip ties with me, or having my Leatherman with me as just a multi-tool to use for a variety of situations. And I think that goes back to my time as a Boy Scout. I was just always, it was ingrained in me to be prepared and to have the tools ready for any job and be prepared for any outcome. You never know if it's going to rain or snow or flood or whatever it may be. If you have the right gear, you can prevail regardless of the situation around you. And I think that was ingrained in me at a young age, and it's what I thrive off of. It's really almost an addiction to me that I love to go to the live events and produce live events because there's so many opportunities for the event maker to make or break the event, and for the attendee to make the most of a situation, to be prepared for all those different outcomes. But as the event maker, we have the responsibility to really make sure that the dependencies are mitigated and that we have enough other backup plans in our arsenal so that we're prepared for those potential outcomes. Then what could go wrong? So really make a list. This goes back to when I was a sound engineer. I worked on a large number of large-scale live events, and I would go into our warehouse where we kept all the sound gear, and I would think, okay, I've got to run the cables from the podium mic down to the mixer, from the mixer back to the amp rack. And I would think about the wiring configuration in my mind, and then I would always think, okay, what if I'm off by 10 feet? Okay, I'll throw another cable in for that. What if one of those cables crosses the doorway and gets run over by something heavy and gets severed? I would think through all those potential outcomes, and I would usually end up taking probably about twice as many cables as I actually needed, but at least I always had enough to be prepared. And the same goes for just preparing for food and everything else. Obviously, we can't always have twice as much food as will be needed, but you do try to think through where could things go wrong and how do you best mitigate that. So that's the fifth one, is how can I prepare for these issues? So obviously those 5 things are all very interconnected, but they actually help us all mitigate the amount of chaos that could happen at an event, and really allow us as event makers to become masters of that chaos and expect the unexpected, prepare for that, and generally be prepared for whatever may come. And then going along with that, I think there's 2 really kind of emotional rules for us as event makers. And the first is to ignore sunk costs. And that's a really hard thing for a lot of people. But what that means is that if you're looking at saying, oh, we paid for all these canopies and tents and everything to help with the rain that was supposed to be here, and then the rain didn't come, and you're kind of like disappointed. Maybe we paid for this and we didn't get the value out of the tarps and the canopies that you brought in. That might be one. or maybe you had a lot of extra food and people just generally didn't eat the food, but maybe they were buying stuff from surrounding food trucks. Maybe that actually was the experience these people were looking for. And so it's a lot of times very hard to separate ourselves from the money we put into something or the time we've spent preparing for something. That, even if it's potentially a better outcome, we have a hard time ignoring those sunk costs. And this is very true for anybody who's been an entrepreneur. You might go down the road thinking there's a certain business model you're going to follow, and you'll invest in that business model only to realize as you get halfway down the path, there's actually a better and bigger opportunity ahead of you. But you've got to pivot and really be prepared to ignore the costs you put into the previous path and fully invest yourself in the bigger opportunity, the better path forward. And so really understanding how to internalize that mindset, I think ultimately takes a lifetime. You could say it another way is, don't cry over spilt milk, but there's a lot of different ways to think about just moving on and making the most of the situation. And that's the next one, which is make the most of every opportunity and stay positive. And again, things are going to go wrong. It's how do you make that experience truly memorable for anybody who was there, making it unique for those that may have traveled and paid a lot for the experience. How do you make the most for them? Because that's what it's all about. That's the grand vision. And so with that, I just wanted to go through a few war stories. Having been a sound engineer for a lot of events, having supervised the live AV support for more than 8,000 events, even before I started SpinGo. And then since I've been here at SpinGo, we've gathered content for more than 5 million events in our database over the years, and we've now promoted more than 20,000 events on our platform. These are event makers that have paid us to help them market their events. And so having watched both from the inside and the outside, these are just some lessons that I've learned and some war stories that I've experienced working with a few events. And I went through and pulled just some photos from my own photo gallery of the last few months and some things that I experienced firsthand, and just wanted to share a few insights. So one is Country Explosion. Here's a country music festival. You think, what could go wrong with a title like Explosion? But the fact is it was actually extremely hot those 3 days, and it was pretty uncomfortable during the day. And so some of their attendee numbers were less than they were expecting. We thought, as SpinGo, how can we add value? And so we brought our trailer in and some go-karts, and we actually brought in 5,000 Otter Pops. And it was a crisis for us to try to keep those Otter Pops frozen, but we tried everything from dry ice to they had a big beer truck full of ice, and we've learned that a truck full of ice will maintain frozen ice, but it won't freeze Otter Pops. So we had to upgrade to the dry ice, which can get quite expensive. So I ended up running at 1 o'clock in the morning before the second day to Walmart and bought a deep freeze, just a big chest freezer. Put a padlock hasp on the top so that I could keep it outside and plug it in. And pretty funny because we parked it outside the beer garden, but the security guys came by right around 2 o'clock in the morning and said, "Hey, you can't leave out here. These guys who are drinking all night are going to be crazy. They're going to try to break into your freezer and think that they'll think it's full of alcohol. So you better make sure you put that somewhere else." So they rolled it inside their warehouse overnight. But overall, the Otter Pops were a total hit. You can see in the bottom right corner, there's some people enjoying their Otter Pops, but it brought just a crowd over to that part of the event, helped to pacify the crowds. Moving 5,000 Otter Pops, I think, definitely made an impact and a lasting impression on the people, and it gave us a chance to talk a little bit more about the event and see what was enjoyable for them. Startfest. This is an entrepreneur investor conference that's held in Utah. And this one was in Salt Lake City. And I saw on the schedule there was a big gap for food. They didn't really have anything in mind between lunch and dinner. And I knew about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that'd be that kind of slump where people are looking for a snack, something that's more than just a granola bar. And so I placed the largest order ever placed at Happy Sumo, the sushi restaurant in Salt Lake. And we brought in cases of sushi and got permission from the event organizer just to go up on stage and say, "Hey, we've got some sushi outside in the trailer." And we had a mad rush of people come in to pick up that sushi. But again, just looking for ways to add value to the event, capitalizing on the opportunity that may be overlooked by the original plan of the event. They may not have thought they needed to accommodate people between lunch and dinner, but there was an opportunity there. And usually these things lead to additional conversations, additional marketing opportunities, as well as just generally improving the event experience for the attendees. I recently attended Salt Lake Comic-Con, and their keynote speaker was Buzz Aldrin, the second man to step foot on the moon. And obviously, here's somebody who knows how to make the most of any situation, how to deal with unexpected outcomes. And the funny thing, though, is as he got up and started talking, he said, "Hello, Salt Lake City. It's great to be here. Yeah, usually there's words on this thing in front of me called the teleprompter. Can somebody help me with that?" And he just was ad-libbing for like 20 minutes while they're trying to fix the teleprompter. And while he's talking, they've got the tech guys coming out, trying to troubleshoot the prompter and figure out what had gone wrong. But while he's speaking for those 20 minutes, I was just totally enjoying myself as an attendee in this situation where it wasn't my problem to solve the prompter. It wasn't an issue I had to fix, but I was just enjoying hearing Buzz speak off the cuff and just hearing him tell stories. He didn't have slides to go along with it or anything at this point, but it was actually the best part of the entire talk was just hearing him share some personal experiences and tell some stories. And you really got to see a true side to his personality. And so sometimes even when there's technical problems, it's not always the worst outcome. And I don't think it was a negative experience by any means for any of the attendees. Just a couple weeks ago, I was in up the canyon here from Salt Lake, and they had a summit for CEOs, entrepreneurs, and investors in Salt Lake, called the Kickstart CEO Summit. And they brought in Martin Fry as a keynote speaker. And Martin was just awarded by the Guinness Book of World Records the award to be the first man or person who has scaled and summited all of the 7 summits on the 7 continents and sailed the 7 seas. And he just got back from this journey 3 weeks prior, and he was speaking to us. We were his first address after completing this journey over several years, and he was speaking to us. And right as he's getting ready to speak, this giant storm comes in. It was out in the patio, and it's beautiful spring day here in Salt Lake City. The sun was out, and birds chirping in the trees, and all of a sudden this black cloud comes in and totally transforms the vibe. And they had this little canopy over the top, but it just started to just flood, just torrential downpour. And while Martin is speaking, his subject is all about weathering the storm, and he's speaking to entrepreneurs. But it was just so fitting to sit here and hear this man who had just accomplished all this around the world and dealt with terribly traumatic experiences and the tough weather all around. He's laughing because he's used to that. His laptop got soaked as the water rushed down onto his MacBook, but he keeps going, and it was a really unique experience. All of us who were there in attendance will never forget the time that Martin Fry talked to us about weathering the storm in the middle of a torrential downpour. So pretty interesting experience that will stick with us. Recently, I was in Costa Rica. I went down to help a friend put together an event. He just wanted to do a community night in the park. And we brought in this truss and everything, and he'd asked me to come down and bring a screen. And you can see it over on the far right edge. There's kind of a silver tarp looking thing. We'd hung this in the trees because we were going to be showing video clips and things while the band was performing. And they were supposed to turn off the lights in the park. We had worked it out with the park officials to turn off all the lights so that they'd be bright enough to see the projector. They ended up not being able to turn off the lights, and so we had to make do and hang another tarp or another screen back behind the stage, and that ended up working out pretty well. But while I was there, a lot of people were kind of bummed out that I had brought this tarp and we rigged it and had it all set up, and they're like, "Oh, we're not even using the screen. This is just really unfortunate." And they were really kind of like disappointed that it didn't work out. And I was fine with it because I thought, this is actually going to work out well, and we could see the screen better. And we just have to clear the stage before we ended up showing more specific movie clips. But then the rain came at this event too. And I was glad that the projector, first of all, was under the canopy, But then we removed the tarp that we were using for the screen, and it became the canopy that we held over all the attendees during the last part of the event. And again, everyone who was there will remember that experience of a bunch of people huddled under this tarp while it's pouring rain, and we're listening to the band and watching this movie. So again, there's an example of the gear you bring may be used for an unintended purpose, but overall it helped add value to the event. This was an event we did on Halloween in Center Street, on Center Street in Provo. It's called Nightmare on Center Street. And huge turnout. They had 8,000 attendees, just people showing up in costume for a Halloween bash. And they had asked us to bring our trailers to park it towards the back and just provide value as a sponsor to the event. So we were there. And I went up on the roof to take the picture on the right. And I'm standing up there, and all these people turn and notice that I'm up on the roof with this trailer. And when I come down the ladder of the trailer, there's a line of people waiting to get on the roof. They all thought, hey, I want to get up there and get some pictures too. And so rather than try to turn all these people away, obviously this is up to each of you with your own liability insurance, but we actually opened up the roof for up to 2 people at a time to come up and dance in costume on the roof. So you can see we had the appearance of Beetlejuice and Michael Jordan and some schoolgirls and a whole variety of different people dancing on the roof. And it became one of the highlights of the events. You can see the people down below taking pictures, and this is what overwhelmed the Instagram feed for this event, was just these rooftop dancers. And it was just the attendees that got to play a part of the event, and they felt like they were more active participants or providers, contributors to the event experience. And so there was just a situation where things totally went different than we'd expected. But because we were open to a few different options, it actually turned out really well. And the crowds actually got those in the back half that weren't up close to the stage, felt like they were more involved in the event in a different way. Recently, we were down at the Great American Foodie Fest in Las Vegas, and we had been contracted with them to do all their online ticket sales through SpinGo Event Master. And they were expecting about 40,000 attendees. But as we got down there, they had a line around the corner, and people were frustrated because there was no signage and no clear communication about what they could expect or even how much it cost. And so we saw this opportunity, and we sent a bunch of the staff from SpinGo down there to be on site with smartphones and iPads. And we were able to actually process about 10% of their ticket sales through smart devices while people were waiting in line. And then we could just funnel them up to the left side. They could bypass the line and walk right in because they could buy virtually online through the smartphones and tablets. And so we took an opportunity where the lines were one of their biggest issues and definitely the bottleneck of the event. And we turned it into something positive where they were able to create 10% of their revenue through, they were able to capture 10% of their revenue through the online portal, and that provided the email addresses for all those attendees that they can use for marketing and gave them some visibility into those attendees that they can follow up with for surveys and other communications. And that's something that they would have missed entirely if they simply had people wait in line and pay cash at the front. And what's worse is they probably would have, without having some alleviation to the line, they probably would have turned a lot of people away just because they would have been frustrated just waiting without any type of signal of what they could expect or not seeing the line being resolved in any way. And so those are just a few examples of different events that we've worked with. You can see that it's been a little bit of just what we think of as honey badgerness, where you just kind of jump in and get things done. There's not a perfect science to any of this. It's just looking at the opportunity, making the most of every situation, and ignoring the sunk costs, and really thinking about overall, what is the grand vision for the experience, and how do we best enable that as event makers. And so those are just some stories I want to share, and things that are close to my heart, and some of the opportunities that will stick with me for the rest of my life, just because it was fun to be a part of it. And the ones that are most exciting to me are the ones that turn out differently than expected. And that's always exciting. So.
Well, thank you very much, Kreg. That was excellent. And I know that you've had a lot of experience putting on events, helping out with events, and just watching events and attending events yourselves. So I'm sure you've seen a lot, as we've seen from some of these war stories. And I think one thing that we can learn is that there is always something that's going to go wrong at an event, no matter what. It won't go 100% according to plan. But we have some time now for a couple of questions. If you want to submit your questions to the GoToWebinar panel, we'll go ahead and answer a few of those. But real quick, as we're waiting for a few more to come in, what are some things that you always make sure to have on hand at any event?
So as an event maker?
Yeah, as an event maker.
So depending if I'm flying in or not, but if I can drive, I typically have some basic tools. I always have my Leatherman with me, which is a standard multi-tool. But I always have zip ties, some various adapters. Just in my laptop bag that I carry with me every day, I have a little XLR to headphone jack adapter. So at any point, anywhere, I could always plug in my phone, even to just like a wall jack at like a school or a church or wherever. I could always plug it into just a mic input and DJ on the fly. And there's even an app you can use on your iPhone to make it a microphone. And so I have a mic and basically a DJ setup with me anywhere with one simple adapter. So that's one thing I always carry with me. And then the multi-tool just allows you to fix things on the fly. I'm probably a little more diehard than most people. I also carry a soldering iron with me, a little butane soldering iron that I carry with me, and I can always solder something if it breaks or a cable needs to be retrofit really quickly. I can wing that. So those are a couple things. If you have more space, a generator is never a bad idea. You can never have too many generators at an event. Having a canopy, a tarp, those types of things are always good to have.
Let's see. So there is, so when you're at an event, there are a lot of moving parts, and there's attendees that you need to take care of. There's vendors that you need to take care of. There are all of these different types of things going on, and it can be hard to manage everything at once, and it can kind of be stressful. So what are some of the things that, like, I guess the question is, how do you not become overwhelmed? And because you have this perfect plan set out, so how do you not become overwhelmed while things are constantly changing?
So first of all, it will be stressful. I've never been a part of an event that wasn't stressful at some level. It's being prepared for that stress and knowing that it's going to be there. It's like saying that you're going to go to the gym without sweating. That's just part of the experience. And so the stress is going to be there. I think one of the key parts is you've got to have a close team that you absolutely depend on. People who won't let you down. People that will answer your call day or night. People who will be there in the trenches with you. And I think having those people that you can delegate to and know that they'll come through, that's key to distributing the stress probably a little bit. And letting people help you carry the load. I think that's one of the things. The other is just obviously thinking through any potential scenarios that could go wrong, making lists, having contingency plans. Always, as I say, making a plan is extremely valuable, but the actual value of the plan itself is worthless because no plan survives encounter with an enemy, they say, right? And so the second things start hitting and problems start happening, your plan's going to fall apart, but the more energy and time you put into planning, the more prepared you'll be.
That's great. That's great.
So the question is, what is the name of the mic app for the iPhone? I think it's just iPhone mic. So there's nothing special. There's a lot of different ones that just will open up the speakerphone mic input and then send it out over the headphone jack, just so you can talk into it and then have it go right out the headphone jack into an XLR, which is the mic, the connector used for microphones. Perfect. If you want to know what XLR stands for, it's extra long run. There's a little trivia for the day. Extra long run is a new technology they designed to allow microphone signals to be carried long distances at basically low voltages of a microphone. So.
Great. And we do have one more question here, and it's, what are your views on free festivals and the chaos around those?
I love free festivals. I think they're great just because communities can stop in and check them out. What I like about free festivals is people's expectations are generally a little bit lower than those when they come in and pay $50 or $200 for a ticket. And so anything you can do to create value for them is a plus, right? And so there's one here in our hometown where SpinGo's based in Draper, Utah. They call it Draper Days, and they have it every year right around 4th of July weekend. And it's free, open to the public, but they usually bring in some band that they may or may not announce beforehand. And just generally, it's a lot of fun because you've got people rolling in with food trucks, you've got vendors, you've got just a lot of different things coming together. And it's something where we might just decide to stop in for a few hours, but we're having such a good time, we end up staying all day. And I like that because it's where you had kind of lower expectations, but ended up leaving with a better experience than imagined. So
great. And then there will be one more actually, and it says, how do you handle post-event evaluation?
Yeah, so commonly known as postmortem, right? How do you do the biopsy on the event, the autopsy, on the event? But basically, it's looking at it and saying, okay, what went well? What could we have done better? And where were we ill prepared? Where could we have, more gear for that event? And so my bag of tricks that I carry with me has been built over the years of showing up at an event and realizing, oh, I wish I had that. I wish I had this prepared. Or I wish I had thought through that. Obviously, you can spend an infinite amount of time preparing for something. So you got to give yourself some constraints and realize what can I prepare in the weeks or months we have ahead of this event. Or in some cases, we jump into events with just hours notice, even like the Foodie Fest. We literally turned on that in just a couple hours and had a team in Vegas to help handle that. But as you look at all those different outcomes, just be honest with yourself. Don't look at it from an angle of pessimism. Look at it from an opportunistic standpoint. What did we learn? What can we do better? Because hopefully none of these events are your last event. Hopefully you can take those lessons learned and make the next event even better. And so I think as long as you approach it from a positive attitude standpoint, and you are honest with yourselves and you're not worried about pointing the blame, but just looking at the outcome, I think you can make it a very healthy exercise to do a deep dive postmortem.
Well, thank you so much, Kreg, for taking the time to do this webinar for us today. And thank you for those who attended. If we weren't able to get around to your questions, know that you can go to community.spingo.com, or if you go to the homepage of the SpinGo site, you can go to the upper right corner of the page, and there's a community button that you can click there. And you can go ahead and ask your question there. It's a community that we actually recently launched, and it's for the event maker to go and talk with other event makers, people who have been in the trenches and who have experienced some of the same challenges and obstacles that you face in your daily work, where you guys can go and help each other out and answer questions and ask questions. And you can also follow us at SpinGo Events, on Facebook or on Twitter and on Instagram. If you have any questions about this webinar in particular, you can email me at colin.mathis@spingo.com, or you can email Kreg at kreg@spingo.com. So thank you again very much, Kreg, and for all of those who attended, and we will see you next month.
Very good. Thanks, Colin, and all of you event makers that are on the webinar. I salute you, and SpinGo's mission is to support you and make your events better than they ever have been before. So again, thank you for all that you do for the live experiences of others.